I don't know why Marvel doesn't use the Hulk to advertise more. He's basically one big banner. You get it, Pat? You get it?
So that one just wasn't funny. Like
it?
some of them are stupid funny.
What?
That one was just...
It's Bruce Banner. What do you mean it's not funny? Folks, welcome back to Brand Coverage. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Pat Gustafson, and thank you for joining us at a new special time here at, 4 o'clock Eastern here on a Wednesday. I know, a little bit off the beaten path, but look, it was my birthday recently, so I had a little event to go to last night. It was actually called the Mile High Dreams Gala at Ball Arena where the Nuggets play.
Word?
And you basically just walk around and like eat food, and you're near a bunch of players. So like the whole Nuggets team was there, minus Jokic because he's antisocial. The Avalanche were there, and then the Colorado Mammoth and Rapids lacrosse and soccer teams were also there. I didn't recognize any of them, but it was still cool to kind of walk around and eat food and see Jamal Murray and Christian Brown and Michael Porter Jr. just hanging out. By the way, like Michael Porter Jr., I think we all know he's really tall. Like, he's 6'10". He's one of those tall forwards like Kevin Durant. But, like, to know his play style and then see him in person, it doesn't seem right. Like, he's so fucking tall for him to just be a dude that rips threes all the time. It was very jarring, but it was
All
very
the
cool
time.
to see. So it was a good time. But, folks, we've got a good show for you today, and we're going to lead it off with this little nugget of information. Pat and I, in our fantasy league, are playing each other, not just this week, but for the next 2 weeks. We have back-to-back matchups. So our league plays 13 regular season fantasy weeks, right, I believe. And so the first
14.
11...
Oh.
No, it's 13.
13. Fuck me.
Yeah. 13 regular season weeks. The first 11 are effectively a round robin because we have 12 teams in our league, so you play everybody once, but then we have to fill the schedule with, playing somebody or two different teams a second time at the end of the year. Just so happens that Pat and I's first and second matchups are going to be back-to-back here in the next couple weeks. And even better, a playoff spot is on the line. Now, Pat's team objectively is in a better spot than mine is at this point, even though his record is he's only one game above me. What, you're 6-4, right?
6-4.
6-4. I'm 5-5. And only 4 teams in our league make the playoffs. So I'm in a position where I essentially have to win out to make the playoffs. And part of needing to win out is also, well, here's the thing. If you look at the standings, everybody from you through like a couple of the teams below me, I have the tiebreaker over. And so if I were to beat you twice, that would also give me the tiebreaker over you. I'd have the tiebreaker over everybody relevant and most likely get in. But winning out is also not a guarantee for me with how bad my team is, how in shambles I'm in right now.
And here I am beating the top 3 teams, and, just because I don't know why, because Texans defense.
Yeah, so I'm in a spot where it's nice to be this late in the season and still be able to, quote unquote, control your own destiny. Granted, I can't control the fact that my roster is just not in great shape right now. But
this whole panic meter segment is just your roster. We might as
I
well
know.
just shared your screen and we could have gone down your team.
No, it really is. So we'll get to that. Yes, we have a panic meter segment. We'll obviously go through Mount Stud, more Mount Bust, more. We'll go through the ouchie outlook and then our waiver targets for the week. But yeah, just wanted to touch on that Pat and I are playing each other. And Pat and I also made a trade actually since our last show as well. I made a couple of deals to try to, salvage the end of my season here. So I first made a deal with Pat. I sent him DJ Moore because he has a bunch of receivers, but they all happen to be sort of injured at this time last week. And then so I sent him DJ Moore. He sent me TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson had a really nice week, so I'm pretty happy with that so far. And the reason I wanted Hawkinson was because I've had Dalton Kincaid just floundering for me literally all season long. But I was able to actually flip him into Cedric Tillman, which I wasn't too upset about. And it looks even better now with Dalton Kincaid on the injury report. So it kind of just helped my receiver room a little bit. And look, I'm happy with those two trades. My team is just still feeling the effects of I lost each of my top 4 picks for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. and I didn't draft any depth beyond that. So I'm not trying to sit here and say, woe is me. It was all out of my control. I could have drafted better depth, but yeah, my good players, kind of abandoned me at different points this year too. So trying to just make the most here of these last 3 weeks, and we'll see how Pat and I's trade ends up coming into play there, because now you got to face Hawk these next 2 weeks. I don't think I'm gonna have to face DJ Moore.
I could really use the Hawk too, because if Kittle doesn't play, I guess I'm picking up like Will Dissly. And starting him. So Kittle. He's not. He didn't practice today. Awesome, great, neat.
Hey, you could pick up Ross Dwelly or something. But
I don't think it's I don't even know. We've been over this because it's not the guy.
I know.
49ers depth chart. It's like
Jordan Reed. Is it Jordan Reed?
Fuck. It's Eric Sauber.
Eric Sorbet. That's
former
right.
Bronco.
Okay. I was looking through our show sheet. I also noticed that Pat has the our terms of the wager of us playing each other. A loser is executed.
Live on the podcast.
Actively, intentionally benches my whole lineup. All right, let's get into our news.
0-0 tie, baby. We both go out together.
Let's get into our news for the week.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
So one benefit of having our show one day later than normal is we do have this piece of news that we can discuss that just came out today. Anthony Richardson is back for the Indianapolis Colts. It's a gross situation. We'll start here. We'll start from the fantasy perspective. This is not good for if you own any fantasy asset on the Colts outside of maybe Jonathan Taylor, because if you're a Taylor owner, you just want this offense to be functioning as well as possible to give him scoring opportunities. And I don't know that there's been a major difference between Richardson and Flacco as far as that's concerned, but either way, it's not affecting Taylor too much. But if you are a Josh Downs owner or a Michael Pittman Jr. owner, or a, as of this morning, popular waiver ads, Adonai Mitchell or Alec Pierce owner, you're not thrilled by this news. As far as the Colts are concerned, Pat, I think this is ultimately the right move, but I think they are showing their hand as a bit of a dysfunctional organization at this point, that they've already gone back on this so quickly. Their comments throughout the whole situation have been just so stupid and nonsensical. They started Flacco. They said he's going to be our guy the rest of the year, and then they gave him a grand total of 2 games before they were like, just kidding, we're going back to Richardson. What was your reaction when you saw this news? Because to me, it's like, yeah, this is probably what you should have just been doing the whole time, but this whole, their comments aren't really making any sense. It's just kind of whack.
No, it was just laughable, the fact that you turn your back on a guy who only started like 5 games last year, who was like single-digit games into his career or around there, and you're turning your back on him. Granted, for good reasons, he wasn't performing, but for 50-year-old Joe Flacco, who was arguably worse, that guy, it felt like every time he touched the ball, he was throwing it to the other team. And so to not only show your young, potentially franchise quarterback in Anthony Richardson that you don't have full faith in him, to also say that, like, we fucked up. like from a...
Quickly, too.
We're looking at it from, like, a right now perspective. They fucked up in the sense that they switched to Joe Flacco. He was terrible, and they've gone back on it already. But that's just now. From the grand scope of things, how's Anthony Richardson to feel when they're like, yeah, you need more time to develop, and then we're like, you're going back now. It's just... I didn't think the Bryce Young situation could get bungled worse, but I think the Colts have done that.
Yeah, I think when it first happened, when they first benched Richardson for Flacco, I was a little bit more understanding, because I was like, look, I understand, like, Richardson can't really be playing any worse than he was at that point. He had the lowest completion percentage in the NFL. He was like 44% or something like that. And at that point, it's understandable to at least want to give the guy like a mental reset, a breather. But it's like, I wish they would have just come out and said that. And I know coaching transparency isn't always, the priority of the coaching staff itself. But it's like, why? What are you gaining by telling the public, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, which we probably shouldn't, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say this was the plan the whole time, right? Like they were going to go back to Richardson at some point. Like, why not just tell us that rather than letting the public shit on Anthony Richardson and be like, oh my God, he's toast as the Colts starting quarterback already after only 10 career games. That's how little potential they saw in him. That's how little faith they have in him. And it's like, yeah, the proof was in the pudding on the field. It wasn't good, but like, if you were going to make this move, you should have been a little bit softer about the process, because now it just seems like you're going back and forth to like trying to find a spark here because nothing's working. It's like, oh, we fucked up, And I also thought it was very funny that the Colts, or I believe it was Shane Steichen, said this benching had nothing to do with Flacco's performance the last 2 weeks. Bull fucking shit.
If he was ripping it up like he did in some of in filling in for Richardson in some of those times, first of all, they wouldn't have made that decision in the first place to put him in. And now, had he been playing that way, they'd be winning games and there'd be no problem here.
They benched Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco because they were trying to find the spark that Flacco gave to Cleveland for that 6 or 7 game stretch to end last year, where he threw for over 300 yards and like multiple touchdowns almost every game. And once they didn't get it, they were like, oh shit, we're not gaining anything now by starting this old guy who sucks when we could just start the young guy who sucks. And it's like, I don't know.
And this division is still up for the taking. Like Houston literally handed Detroit a football game. They're only 2 games. They're 6-4. Indy's 4-6. Had Indy been winning games like they did last year with Gardner Minshew under center, who has now proven to just be a buffoon, they could win games with Gardner Minshew. But now you can't win games in this situation with the fully healthy Jonathan Taylor, with the fully healthy Josh Downs going into the year. Like, it makes no sense. And, again, not only from a structural organization standpoint, it's bad. It's just bad for the on-field product this year, because with Jacksonville and Tennessee being so bad and Houston underachieving at 6-4 still, that's saying something. They could be in this. They could really be in this in the South.
Yeah. I don't know. It screams organizational dysfunction with the Colts, and it always feels like this organizational dysfunction comes from teams with like owners that are way too prominent.
Cokeheads, yeah.
And I think that's the case with Jim Irsay here.
Surprised they didn't draft Jalen Coker, but
fuck, we'll never know truly how much owners have to have their say in these sort of situations, how much they truly are meddling, but it feels like it's probably more than a little. But yeah,
Mark Davis.
Anthony Richardson is back as the Colts starter, for better or for worse. I will say I'm rooting for the kid. I hope to see him have a good game here against the Jets. And as far as fantasy football is concerned for Richardson himself, look, he got dropped in most leagues. Obviously, he wasn't even a starting quarterback on his own team. I think he's worth a pickup. Like, he's not worth a start.
If you need it, yeah.
I think he's worth a pickup just on the off chance that, those 2 games were enough of a reset for him. We know what the upside is if he's able to and willing to, run the ball the way his talents are tailored to be able to do so. So, I think it's worth speculatively adding him because now he's free, right? Like, I wouldn't be telling you with how poorly he's played this year to invest anything in him. But if you can just throw him on the end of your bench and see if maybe this was enough, just like it seemingly was for Bryce Young. Like, Bryce Young at least turned into, not a serviceable fantasy asset, but a competent NFL asset because he sat for a few games. He hasn't looked terrible. You just never know. So I think it's worth speculating on if you need a quarterback.
He certainly has more upside than Joe Flacco with the legs. Definitely. I'd rather take a shot at him than I would have started Flacco the last couple of weeks.
100%. The other piece of news this week, Shane Waldron fired. This one was probably a couple weeks overdue as well, coming, a week after the Luke Getsy firing. This was another, offensive coordinator hire, Pat, that didn't necessarily have the best vibes around it as soon as it happened. I think, it's recirculating now, the clip of JSN talking about Shane Waldron, where they were like, hey, can you give the Bears like any thoughts on what Shane Waldron's bringing to the table? And he was like, are we live? Like, he did not have anything positive come to mind. And then he just kind of spit out, the most PR bullshit answer he could think of. But yeah, Shane Waldron, it did not work out in Chicago, and they are trashing him today, Pat, by the way. I don't know if you've seen some of these quotes, but DJ Moore basically said, any adjustments we wanted to make, for some reason we never made them until halftime, like we waited to make them. And Keenan Allen basically said he wasn't professional with the way he was doing things. He kind of let too many things slide. He wasn't hard enough on the guys. So all in all, complete collapse, complete dumpster fire for Shane Waldron. Matt Eberflus is toast too. That's just might not come.
And Ryan Poles too, of course.
Yeah, that just might not come until the end of the year. Those guys might make it through the year. But as of right now, with Waldron out of the picture, Pat, I don't know if this is going to get any better. Like this, so Thomas Brown is taking over. There's an argument that it can't get any worse, I guess. But I think there's very much an argument that things kind of just stay the same because Thomas Brown's taking over. Thomas Brown was the play caller in Carolina for 3 games last season. They kind of lit up the Packers, who had the incompetent Joe Barry as their DC last year in the first game after Brown took over, and then the Panthers after that scored 0 points combined in their following 2 games. So I'm seeing a little too much like blind optimism that this is going to be an improvement. Just because, bad man gone. But I really wouldn't be banking on a huge turnaround here from the Bears offense, unfortunately.
Yeah, kind of like you said, this was just not a great hire from the start. Also, bad day to be a Tufts alum. Tufts alum Shane Waldron there. But you've kind of seen a lot of these guys come from the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan coaching trees and being really successful. But then there are some guys that are just products of that. More so that when he was in Los Angeles as the the passing game coordinator, whatever he was, it was still Sean McVay's offense, and Sean McVay was probably making him look a little better than he was. And the vibes in Seattle were awful last year, and like you said, the JSN clip. And for Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles to basically know that their asses were on fire, and they bring in Shane Waldron, who, granted, is an upgrade from Luke Getsy, but I think so would you and I. I think you and I calling plays would be an upgrade from Luke Getsy. But
flea flicker every play.
Fuck. Yeah, fullback dive every play when I'm in charge. But yeah, and I'm not super optimistic about this Bears team either. We've seen some good things for them in really short bursts. We've seen Caleb have a few good games. DeAndre Swift has done pretty well with the good volume he's been getting, at least somewhat of late. But yeah, I just kind of think that this season just kind of might be a wash, and it's they're gonna clean the slate next year, and it's looking forward to Caleb Williams, what he can do next year. Because they don't have a bad record, do they? Well, it's not a good one, right? But they're not
I want to say they're 4-6.
4-6 is what I thought, which isn't let's see, they are. It's
not bottoming out.
Yeah, but for a team with that record, you'd think they would be alive. They're 4-5, like that. They could turn it around conceivably, but I feel like a lot of those wins have kind of come on defense and just some big some circumstances rather than just straight up good play. So yeah, I'm not looking for much from any Bear. Maybe DeAndre Swift, just because if he's going to get 15-20 touches a game.
Yeah. I mean, look, we saw DeAndre Swift be very good and very consistent for the last few weeks. So I think regardless who the OC is, there's a chance that continues. I'm just if I'm a, if I'm a DJ Moore owner or a Roma Dunze owner or, God forbid, a Caleb Williams owner, I just don't think I'm expecting some kind of major turnaround. I'm done with the blind optimism, with some of these situations when they just don't really deserve it.
I was thinking about taking Caleb off my taxi squad in my Dynasty League, and I never did, and I am very, very happy with myself for not doing that, because now I have a roster spot for free the rest of the year when I could have stepped on my dick like I did last year with fucking Will Levis.
I didn't realize, so I'm new to Dynasty Leagues this year, and I joined one. I didn't realize that once you take a guy off the taxi squad, you can't put him back. So that was my mistake. I rostered, of all people, Anais Smith on my taxi squad because I wanted to see what he could do. And as soon as he got activated, I took him off, and now I'm why did I do that? So now I have one guy on my taxi squad, and it's Parker Washington. So yeah, just a little fun fact for you. But yeah, look, as far as the Bears go, I'll say this, the Patriots beating them effectively is what forced this issue. Beating them so badly, it was 19-3. Pretty bad showing. 3 points. I mean, look, the Patriots defense is not bottom of the barrel bad, but 3 points is pretty brutal. And I was just happy, and I tweeted this, this was a great sign for the Patriots because coming into the year, we had way fewer assets. We had a much worse looking roster. We had I would argue, maybe even a more questionable coaching staff, although you could certainly make the argument there, because Eberflus was just kind of on the hot seat a little bit coming into the year. But it's nice to see this kind of measuring stick that the Patriots are somehow better off right now than the Chicago Bears are, pretty decisively. Like,
At least from a stability standpoint, yeah.
Right. I mean, things are more functional right now in New England than they are in Chicago, which is kind of all I can ask for at this point. So I'm not too upset. Some other headlines that we want to talk about here, and this one, this one's very close to my heart, and it makes me sad. Does Jonathan Brooks exist? It's a topic.
Don't mind me just victory lapping here.
It's a topic that needs to be broached. And I want to defend like my logic here and why I was bought in on Jonathan Brooks to start the year. But here's where we stand with Jonathan Brooks. So he was finally activated this past week in terms of being eligible to play if they wanted him to.
And he practiced in full.
He practiced in full. He's been practicing in some capacity for like the past 3 weeks. Seemed like everything was teed up for him to make his debut against the Giants in Germany, and they made him inactive. So he was a healthy inactive. He is, by all accounts, going to make his debut after the bye next week. But at this point, for anybody that invested any level of capital into Jonathan Brooks in a redraft league, you are vastly disappointed. And it seems, for anybody that didn't invest in Jonathan Brooks and hasn't really followed this saga as closely because you just haven't needed to, I just want to run through like how I got to this point, why I believed in him, and why this was honestly just a very strange outlier situation. This isn't just, why'd you draft an injured guy and you're surprised that he stayed injured and they brought him along slowly. So here's the situation. My stance on Brooks came from like multiple Twitter doctors, and one specifically who has helped me understand knee injuries over the years for guys like Saquon, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey. Understand those injuries, not just understand them, but leverage them over your league mates. Because I feel like a lot of people from the outside looking in, they see knee injury, they kind of lump them all together. They don't understand the differences. They don't understand the nuances. Not all knee injuries, not all injuries are created equal. And the context that like these Twitter doctors have been able to provide, they help to just not lump everything in. And you could kind of get an advantage from that. So here's the kind of timeline with Jonathan Brooks. On August 3rd, Dave Canales was asked if he was thinking week 3, week 4 for Jonathan Brooks. Was that reasonable? Canales emphatically said, yeah, something around there. That would be great. Obviously, this was before he was placed on the PUP list, which immediately rules you out for those first 4 weeks. Brooks tore his ACL on November 11th, 2023. So it's been 52 weeks since his injury. Adam Hutchinson, another Twitter doctor, noted that some other running backs with similar return timelines to Brooks include Rashad Penny, 53 weeks, J.K. Dobbins, 55 weeks, Gus Edwards, 59 weeks, Javonte Williams, 47 weeks. But all of those guys had injuries on top of the ACL. There were torn meniscuses, there were torn LCLs, PCLs, whatever you want to have in there that overcomplicates the injury. The whole kind of premise into why Jonathan Brooks was a screaming, like, draft him, he's going to be back early, he should be productive this year, was it was just a clean ACL tear. That was it. That's really the best case scenario for any sort of knee injury you can have if it's just a clean ACL tear. Because of this return timeline, Pat, there is reasonable expectation or belief that there was something on top of the ACL that just wasn't reported. Because there's no good reason that it should have taken this long. None. And that's why people drafted him. That's why I drafted him. That's why I believed, because like abundance of caution, forget it. This has gone beyond that at this point.
Yeah.
Like, if it was a clean ACL tear, even if you were abundantly cautious, he should have been back by week 8 or so. Like, for example, and again, with the clean ACL tear, just for the comparison, and this is something I vaguely referenced last week when we thought Brooks was coming back. Part of the reason to draft Brooks again, Todd Gurley tore his ACL in college around the same time of year that Brooks did back in 2014. It was November 14th. Brooks tore his on November 11th. Gurley returned, Gurley returned September 27th of the following year. September 27th, so about almost 2 months sooner than where we are right now. He was eased in with 6 carries for 9 yards, and then after that, he ripped 4 straight 100-yard games with 20-plus touches in each of them. So he wasn't really eased in for long. 1 game, then off to the races. So like that was the bull case for Jonathan Brooks, right? That was what we were comparing to and hoping for as far as the timeline goes, but this has ended up being a mess, a waste of a roster spot. especially for somebody like me, like I ended up whiffing on like most of my depth picks after Brooks. And so to have the Brooks pick back and see if I could have taken somebody else who would have actually contributed for me, that would be great. And so it's just unfortunate. And I think the only lesson you can really take from this, and it's one that like I might just dive even more into, is be more paranoid about injuries than ever before, because not everything gets reported. I'm willing at this point to bet on the fact that Jonathan Brooks did not have a clean ACL tear. There was something else in there that, wasn't necessarily found on the like initial MRI, but like once the doctors got in there, started doing the surgery, they might have seen something else that they didn't know was there before, and had to fix that as well. And then that's not something that like the doctors aren't required to like tell Adam Schefter exactly what they fucking did. They probably told Brooks, told his family, told the Panthers, and that was the end of it. But there were probably more complications. And so when you hear about injuries like this, like it's understandable and fair to take a super cautious approach. And like looking at you, Christian McCaffrey, like we knew Christian McCaffrey was dealing with something before the year. We all just brushed it off because it wasn't presented as anything serious. Yeah. Well, it turned out it was serious. And so I think at this point, coming into the season for fantasy football, like if you hear about an injury, like I'm almost at a point where I'm going to play the super paranoid game and just fade guys who are hurt. Unless it's like a chip nail. Like I'm just kind of out, because you can face situations like this and it just sucks. It's crazy that we're about to head into week, they're on bye this week for week 11. So we'll be heading into week 12 before Jonathan Brooks makes his debut. Just frustrating, man. Frustrating as a Brooks owner. It's been brutal.
And I was someone on the other side of that spectrum saying like that Hubbard's going to be a great value pick because, they may play it safe and, they're not going to be good. And someone jumped down my throat in the chat last week for saying the Panthers are bad. They are. They're terrible. They're better than last year, but they're still bad. So like, why bother, rushing a kid back like this? Like you got to look at a rookie compared to like a veteran, like say Christian McCaffrey. Mm-hmm. Like you could say like, oh yeah, they're going to do everything they can to bring him back as quickly as possible because he's Christian McCaffrey, because they're the 49ers. This was a situation of a player who, third round pick, he probably would have gone sooner had it not been for the injury, but still, there's no reason to rush this guy back. But even with that, I figured it would be maybe week 8.
Right. That's the thing.
This is I don't think even those who doubted Brooks's timeline being as fast as people thought that this would be the outcome for it. And now the thing is, it's so late in the year where I feel like any of that league winner gusto that he has is non-existent unless something happens to Chuba Hubbard, knock on wood, because if they were that slow with getting him back into play, who's to say, why would they throw caution against the wind and just throw him to the wolves? They're going to ease him back in terms of involvement. I mean, unfortunately, it might hurt Chuba Hubbard down the line, but I don't see Jonathan Brooks as a startable player as long as Chuba Hubbard plays the rest of the way. And I took him in a league too, and that team fucking stinks.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's still a non-zero chance that Brooks' talent emerges over the last few weeks and he ends up being a startable, if not league-winning asset. But yeah, like to be a league winner, like the teams that drafted you need to still be competing. And like I'm very much on the verge of not competing at this point in our part of my like process this year with how I approached my running backs was like, I'm going to have this guy after like 6 or 7 weeks, and he's going to be relatively productive. And especially seeing how good the Panthers O-line has been, seeing how good Chuba had been on top of that partially because of the O-line, maybe dampened some of those hopes a little bit. But like to see how good the line was, I was like, I don't even care. Partial
could have been good for Brooks
role
too.
In this backfield, like a 1B option behind a good O-line, that would be great for my team, and like that's something I'm excited to bank on. And now I'm sitting here like, well, that was not something I should have been considering with any of my other moves this year, just because of how it played out. But like, it just sucks. It feels like an outlier. It feels like we had a lack of information as a fantasy community, and now like we don't know what to expect from him going forward because we don't know the true extent
And
of the
there's
knee
really
injury.
no reason to trust it right now.
No,
for the rest of the
no.
way this year. With what we've seen, there's no reason to trust it.
No, it's super ass. So yeah, look, the Jonathan Brooks situation is an L. I'm sad to be a part of it. I'm sad that it partially messed up my season because if I had just disregarded him coming into the year, maybe I would have drafted a guy like Chuba Hubbard, and God, that would have helped my fucking team by this point. And now Chuba Hubbard signed an extension, so just Panthers are just a hilarious team.
And he just went over and looked great in Germany.
I know. All right, moving on.
I just learned that he was Canadian. I didn't know that.
Chuba Hubbard's Canadian?
Yeah, and then Chuba is his birth name. I wasn't sure if it was like, because I'm like, Chuba, that sounds like it could be like maybe German. I don't know, but no, Canadian.
Chuba with like the 2 dots over the U. Okay, moving on to the other headlines of the week. Christian McCaffrey's back. There was no easing him in. He got a bunch of touches in his first game. It didn't result in like the greatest fantasy performance, but that's mostly because he didn't find the end zone. Still 13.7 half PPR points, which you're happy with if you've had him.
Better than the 0 you've been getting. Like if you are somehow still in contention and are getting Christian McCaffrey back now, God bless. Like you're living life right now. I'm 3-7 in the league I have him, so I'm not feeling good like that.
Yeah, most teams with him I feel like are in bad shape, but like the team in our league has him, and he's 6-4 now, so
Third place,
he's still got a very good chance to hit the playoffs with McCaffrey. Another headline from this week: Jerry Jones is just a fucking idiot.
My goodness.
I don't even know what to make of this guy anymore. I mean, we were talking about, we basically said the same thing last week for a different reason because he traded for Jonathan Mingo and gave up a 4th-round pick for him. And now
this is worse.
Jerry Jones is fighting the sun, I think.
And it's not just Steven.
Yeah. God damn it. There were complaints specifically from CeeDee Lamb, but the Cowboys in general, that they couldn't fucking see the ball at the end of the game because the sun is just shining through the window or through the windows of AT&T Stadium into their eyes. And Jerry defies the idea of putting up curtains because he says, well, we know where the sun is and we should just plan for that. It hasn't changed. And I'm like, man, this guy just doesn't ever want to be wrong. He
need to know where the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are, because you need Jesus, motherfucker. Like, God, needs to be with Jesus soon enough.
I can't recall a single time Jerry Jones has actually taken responsibility for anything that's gone wrong with this team. Like, he said, he said, I'm never stepping down because nobody can do this job better than me, even though the Cowboys haven't truly done jack shit in 30 years. He's getting complaints about the stadium that it's such an easy fix to just put curtains over the goddamn windows at a certain point in the game when the sun is setting and your players can't see when they're trying to win a game with Cooper motherfucking Rush at quarterback. Like, not that that game was close at any point, but still, like, I'm fascinated by the ego of this man that is at an absolute detriment to his football team. And just to remind anybody that, like, hasn't been around for the Cowboys actually being successful, which is anybody under the age of like 32. The Cowboys haven't done shit essentially since the NFL like implemented a salary cap. So this guy is just not an actual NFL owner on the caliber of any of these other owners, and he's a fucking moron, and he's got to go if the Cowboys are ever going to do anything.
It's all ego, and that's the thing, is like, he doesn't necessarily need to go as owner. He just needs to relinquish the reins as GM, because people could say all they want, like, oh, Steven's actually the one pulling the strings. No, he is not. Like, This is Jerry Jones' team, and I was curious now. I just kind of looked up the ages of GMs, because he's 82 years old. He is 82 years old. We were having a conversation about this for something completely unrelated. And, like, he's just losing it. Like, they say one of the signs of dementia is, like, getting angry out of nowhere and, like, snapping. That man flipped shit on those radio guys, threatened to firing them because they asked him, like, a remotely difficult question.
Yeah.
And now he's out here, like, wanting to launch a fucking bazooka into the sun. Like, this guy is completely lost the plot, and the Cowboys will never do anything as long as this guy still has the say over the day-to-day operations of the football team. He can still own the team, sure, but they need somebody else making decisions. But as long as he owns the team, that will never happen. And with the way it's set up with the family line, he's going to own that team until he literally dies. Yeah. He is going to be in charge of this football team. It's just so embarrassing from, America's team, at one point the most storied franchise in NFL history. to just be a complete laughingstock, and especially this year, doing nothing in the offseason. You extend Dak, he's mid as fuck and then gets hurt. You extend Lamb, that's good. You don't bring in any running back help. You don't do anything to compete in a league that's moving up, and yeah, it is just laughable. And as a man who lost his fantasy matchup by 3.5 half PPR points, I did not see the CD drop live, and the first time I saw it, I almost retired from life when I saw that one. Like, man was just like
yeah.
It's like when you're driving and you can't see, and you're just like, the road's got to be somewhere.
You're hoping that there's not a cliff in front of you. So I just looked it up. NFL salary cap implemented in 1994. The Cowboys' last Super Bowl was 1995. That was their last championship. So as soon as the salary cap got like fully, acclimated into the league, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, we can't buy everybody. I have no fuck. What do I do? And it's been 30 years of that. So sorry, Cowboys
it's
fans.
It's the worst thing that's happened to Jerry Jones since the integration of schools.
Jerry Jones needs to unintegrate from this earth. Moving on to maybe the only other Jones that's been more disappointing in the NFL, and that's Daniel Jones. Pat, we might finally get put out of our misery with Danny Dimes.
Send them with Jerry.
I get them both out. The Giants are on bye this week, and there is decent talk. I'm not even going to say decent talk. He's going to get benched. Adam Schefter said he thinks that Daniel Jones has finally played his last snap with the Giants, and it's about 60 games too late. Daniel Jones has 70 career games with the Giants. It's about 60 games too late. I'm fascinated that Daniel Jones managed to have this much longevity in a league where, again, like Anthony Richardson got benched after 10 career starts. A guy with, I feel like, a similar career arc, like Mitch Trubisky, showed some upside at one point with the Bears and then bottomed out. He only started like 30 games for the Bears, and Daniel Jones has somehow managed to siphon 70 starts out of the Giants.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
And a $40 million a year contract, $160 million contract out of the Giants.
I respect
but it might finally be. I mean, he's got the either best agent or dumbest front office on the planet.
It's Tommy DeVito's agent, man. It's the chicken parm guy, whatever the fuck he is. But this is so crazy just because, like, similarly to Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles, Joe Shane and Brian Dable are fucked. They are gone. Like, I'm surprised with it being the bye week that they're not gone right now. Like, the fact that they made the playoffs in his first year with Daniel Jones, who played well that year. I mean, he didn't... Obviously, the contract was misguided, but it wasn't like they gave it to a guy who had at least, had done nothing, not at least put up some numbers. And they are just absolutely fucked. And even if this is the last time Daniel Jones plays for the Giants, they're just going to have to deal with the repercussions in terms of finances and the cap hit.
Yeah.
No one's going to take that contract. Nobody's going to take that contract. You're going to have to eat most of that contract. And, like, you're watching Saquon Barkley thrive in Philadelphia when you could have given that guy a couple more $1 million and launched Daniel Jones into the sun. It is just... We've been talking a lot about just absolute malpractice and just absolutely clueless organizations. And no one has done that better than the New York Giants in the last decade or so.
It's really fascinating. It does sound like it's going to be Drew Lock time coming out of the bye, and as a Malik Neighbors owner, I could not be happier. There have been a few things affecting Malik Neighbors, which we'll talk about in a second when we get to the panic meter, that go slightly beyond Daniel Jones, but Daniel Jones not helping. And to me, Pat, it's like I've been saying this was obvious for the last like 2.5 years. Like, it's crazy to me how long NFL franchises can delude themselves into thinking that their guy might be fine. Like, once a guy shows you who he is, again, 70 starts. Like, when did he ever show you that he was a $40 million a year quarterback? Never. You were paying him that based on hope, based on what? What did he do up to that point that told you there was going to be enough of a canvas there for you to build
he had
a $40 million a year
defense was their main factor that led them to those playoffs.
It's just crazy, man. I mean, good for them for, we believe realizing their mistake eventually, but like this went on.
They're going to start Eli Manning instead.
That would be an improvement.
Pay back what they did to him in 2018, 2019.
That would be a major improvement at this point. I think you take Eli off the guy, bro. Go get Cooper Manning. I don't care. And I would say Arch, but like that would actually be an improvement.
That would actually be kind of cool. Yeah.
Cooper Manning. Go get him. Go get Papa. All right, and finally, last headline. Fuck the Chiefs, man. I just fuck the fucking Chiefs. I say this in a different way every week now because last week it was stop going to overtime with the Chiefs and fucking around when you do it. This week it's more of a what is with the Chiefs black magic that helps them keep winning games. The Broncos had a chip shot field goal and it got blocked. What the fuck, man?
Arrowhead. They were going to go to Arrowhead and ruin their undefeated season. Unbelievable.
I don't know what to make of this team anymore, man, because, again, I'm sorry, and I'm going to keep hating, but they're not good enough to be undefeated. They're good enough to be 7-2. I
think they're still probably
team.
The best team in the league.
They're probably the best team in football. But this is not an undefeated cap. This is not the Patriots of 2007. This is not.
What happened to those guys?
I don't know. This is more like, Pat, do you remember the season the Steelers started like 11-0? And everyone was like, they're just not. Like, that was a little bit worse because that was objectively like, they're not that good. What the fuck is happening?
At least this is still Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs.
That 11-0 Steelers team was like, bro, they should be like 6-5. Like, what is happening? This Chiefs team should be, as they are 9-0, they should be like 7-2, maybe 8-1. But like, for them to still have a 0 in that loss just fucking drives me crazy. I'm done with them.
And the scary thing is Mahomes is starting to look a little better too. Like he's starting to actually put up some more numbers. If he really kicks it in.
The scary thing to me is that I don't think anyone's taken them out before the Super Bowl, and I hate that because then once you put them once you put them in the I don't mean they're not going to lose a game. I mean they're going to get to the Super Bowl. Once you put them in that game. And I'm not like refs, they're going to make the Chiefs win kind of guy. But like once you put them in that game, you're almost leaving things up to chance of them winning another fucking Super Bowl. Because whoever they face in the Super Bowl, it's going to be a close game. There's going to be, hair-splitting plays that send it one way or the other. To me, the fact that I'm almost earmarking them to at least make that game because the teams that have the best chance of knocking them off, they're in the NFC to me. I don't... The Ravens' defense is fucking trash.
You don't think the Bills?
The Bills have the best shot within the AFC to me.
But they'll just do something hilarious.
But they'll do something dumb to lose the game. I think to
Diggs
me,
will be out there watching it for some reason.
He's back there just looking ominous. To me, the best teams are both in the NFC. I would argue all three are in the NFC. It's the Detroit Lions, it's the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's the, if they get healthy, San Francisco 49ers. I think those are the three biggest threats to the Chiefs. League indiscriminate. Like, it's the Chiefs, and then it's those three teams, and then I'll start putting, the Bills, whatever. And that might be a hot take, whatever you want to say. But that's how I feel about it, and I hate it because I just feel like I'm auto-chalking the Chiefs to the fucking Super Bowl again. Fuck them. Okay, back to fantasy football here. We've got our panic meter, and it's time. Look, I'm panicking on some of these guys. Some of them I may not be. And as Pat alluded to, half of it's just my roster. So I'll note every time we talk about a player on my roster. Here's one.
Look, there I am, Gary. There I am.
Here's one. Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors has had a pretty mediocre few weeks since returning from the concussion. At first, to start the season, he looked like possibly the wide receiver 1 overall. That was the sort of upside that he flashed. At the very least, he was looking like a top 3, top 5 wide receiver. Now, since coming back, he has gone for this is half PPR, 6.1, 10.6, 10.4, 7.8. Now, look, hitting double digits a couple times, even though just barely, you're like, okay, it could be worse. Well, before that, to start the year, he went 9.1 in his debut, then 23.7, 24.2, and 17.1. With the changes that the Giants are, we believe, making here from Drew Lock at quarterback, or to Drew Lock at quarterback, I should say, I think my panic meter with Malik Neighbors is I'm at about a 6 right now. And that might be slightly higher than some might think going to a different quarterback that's not Daniel fucking Jones. But and I mentioned this on Twitter as well, I was low-key trying to move off of Malik Neighbors when Andrew Thomas got hurt. Because Andrew Thomas, stud left tackle for the Giants, went down after week 4, I believe it was, or week 5, something like that. And basically the idea is that he's the guy that gives the offense and gives the quarterback enough time for things to develop downfield. And so I was like, well, Malik Neighbors, he's still going to be hyper targeted, and he has been. He's still gotten, double-digit targets in each of his last 3 games. But he's basically turned into fancy Wan'Dale Robinson because they haven't been able to let anything develop downfield. I'm slightly worried that that's still going to be the case with Drew Lock, even if Drew Lock is going to be able to throw him a better ball. The schedule opens up for Malik Neighbors a little bit as well, which is some room for optimism. You've got the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, the Saints, the Ravens. None of those are secondaries that really make you afraid,
really
especially with the Saints getting rid of Marshawn Lattimore. But it's still just what I've seen since Thomas has gone down, Pat. I'm putting it at a 6. Where would you put your panic meter for Malik Neighbors right now?
I was gonna go around like a 4 or a 5. Say, like, Daniel Jones was the starter, I'd probably say like an 8. Like if that was the case, because
fair.
We have just seen, like I said, that offense just be so bad, and to the point where there was a point in the year where everyone was like, who cares how bad that offense is? That volume is unbeatable. And they were right. If that was the trend that was going to go on, that was going to be the case. But that volume hasn't been quite there. Obviously injuries and whatnot, but I really think the only thing Drew Lock really provides is he's going to throw the ball downfield a little more, I guess. He's got more of an arm. He wraps on the sideline a little more than Daniel Jones, but he's a backup for a reason. Like, I don't think this is going to be a case where, like, even like with the Colts going to Joe Flacco, like at least with Flacco there was some optimism. It's like, yeah, we saw Joe Flacco go on a Linsanity run last year. Drew Lock, there's not a ton to believe that he's going to light it up either. But with that said, oh god, hang on, hold the fort. Didn't open my notes.
Hodling
the
fort.
I actually did a lot of notes today and just didn't open them. I feel like an idiot. Yeah. Oh, but first of all, he hasn't had a touchdown since week 3, which hurts because I don't know if the Giants do. Do the Giants have a touchdown since week 3?
It's probably all Tyrone Tracy. I think
Theo Johnson. Yeah. The jury's still out there, but the targets are still good. And if that continues with Drew Lock, I think he'll at least be a guy that you're starting on a weekly basis. But is he this wide receiver 1 type guy that's going to dominate? No. But.
Yeah, I think it's that, and that's why when the hype was kind of at its highest, I was trying to float let me get him off my team for Justin Jefferson, something to that effect, and that wasn't crazy at the time. Now it seems crazy, and I was very much worried this would happen. So I'm hoping the schedule opening up and the Drew Lock change helps. I'm still at about a 6 on him, so it could be worse. Pat, let's shift over to your team real quick here. CeeDee Lamb. So now that Dak Prescott is officially done for the year, and Cooper Rush threw for what? 43 yards this past week, no yards essentially, and the sun's in his eye all the time. How are we feeling about CeeDee Lamb the rest of the way?
I'm at a 3. I'm personally not terribly concerned because, first of all, I think they need Trey Lance. I genuinely think that they need to start Trey Lance, which is
God.
But
I don't know if that's better.
Even from the eye test, just watching that game, Cooper Rush looked fucking awful. That man, it looked like he was barely throwing it past the sticks on any throw. So, granted, Lamb still had, I think 10 targets, which is good. If these targets are shit, then what the hell does that matter? But that said, this is still an offense where, again, what their big get was Jonathan Mingo. He is still the guy in this offense, and it's not like they go and run the ball like crazy. He's still the guy. And, he dropped a touchdown because of the fucking sun. Hey, he catches that touchdown, his day looks a lot better. Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just think he's still CeeDee Lamb. I still think the volume's going to be there. Again, is he going to be the wide receiver 1 overall like he was drafted to be? No. But he's still going to be a guy that's, a borderline top 12 wide receiver that you're putting in your lineup every week.
Yeah,
but
I think
temper your expectations, but with Trey Lance, I think at least the depth of target will increase at the very least with Trey Lance.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Well, I don't know that the depth of target will increase with Trey Lance. I don't know that Trey Lance belongs in the NFL at this point. But look, I think No. Either way, they're fucked. I think my camera's about to shut off because.
Pat Show, let's go.
Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Hey. Okay, I think I gotta get a different battery, so I'll do that in a second. But
Nah.
yeah,
I think. All right.
I think I'm at.
People are here.
I probably at about a 5 for CeeDee Lamb because I think you're absolutely right. I think he's going to end up about, weekly. I would consider him anywhere from like wide receiver 10 to 12 just because of the quarterback downgrade. It's very Malik Neighbors-esque of just once the quarterback starts playing like shit, nothing else really matters. The schedule upcoming is like favorable, but like not the most favorable. So they've got the Texans this week, which their defense hasn't been great. Then they've got the Commanders, but the Commanders in week 12 will likely have Marshawn Lattimore active for that game. So then you've got a good corner covering CeeDee Lamb on top of a quarterback that can't seemingly get him the ball. But then you've got the Giants, the Bengals, the Panthers, the Bucs. So it's a decent schedule for Lamb. It's a guy who's going to get a ton of targets. It's a guy who the offense is going to run through him. I just think, especially if you drafted Lamb and you've had him all year and you drafted him with like a top 5 pick. I know, Pat, you got him slightly later, just barely later than that. This is a guy that you are excited about because of his like 30-point upside. I think that's gone. Like there's no more 30. There's no more 30-point upside. There's really not much like 25-point upside. Is there 20-point upside? Yeah, probably. It's CeeDee Lamb. But after that, it's just, I wouldn't call it a panic, but I think it's certainly a necessary lowering of expectations. The next player on our list is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. Actually, I realize I can get a battery now because I have wireless headphones now, so I don't have to take them off. But it's Brian Thomas Jr.
I have first-generation AirPods in my ears.
I mean, that's pretty close.
We are not the same.
That's pretty close. Brian Thomas Jr. has the incomparable Mac Jones as his quarterback right now. He had him last week, but it's now been 2 straight weeks of a guy who at one point this season was as high as, I believe, wide receiver 7 overall.
He's been a wide receiver 1 for a lot of the year.
Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr.'s last 2 weeks, 5.2 points and then 2.2 points. This week, we'll have Mac Jones again as his quarterback going up against the Detroit Lions, and Trevor Lawrence's future for this season at least, very much in question. Yeah. Pat, what is your I gave a number for CeeDee Lamb. What's your number panic meter-wise for Brian Thomas Jr. while I change my camera battery?
Like an 8 or a 9. Like, honestly, I think I'd be panicking the most of anyone we're going to be talking about. Just because, Brian Thomas was one of the big fantasy rookies going into this year. I don't think anybody expected him to be this good. And, obviously touchdowns help. I don't want to call him touchdown dependent, but games where he doesn't have a touchdown, 5 games without a touchdown, he has single-digit half PPR fantasy points in 4 of those. And without Trevor Lawrence, who at the very least is going to throw the ball down the field, is capable of doing it, you're not going to get that with Mac Jones. You're not going to get that. Granted, they played the Vikings, who have been really good defensively, but Mac just lowers his ceiling so much, and the problem is that, that ceiling was kind of capped with Trevor Lawrence to begin with, and with them giving Trevor Lawrence as much money as they just did, I see no reason to believe why they're going to rush him back under any circumstances. Doug Peterson's toast. Boo. Doug Peterson's toast. And there's no real need. So, if you've got Mac Jones, and he's only caught, I think he's only had 4 catches in the last 3 games, no more than that. So,
last 2 games, yes, correct.
Yeah, so there's just really no... You're banking on a touchdown or you're banking on a big play, and that big play just is less likely to happen with Mac Jones. It's been a good run with Brian Thomas, but I draft weekly in a guillotine league, and he is somebody that I had absolutely zero interest in this week.
Yeah, you make a good point about the touchdown dependence. He is not a guy that racks up a ton of receptions. He's not a guy that racks up
exactly.
He's had games with pretty decent yardage. You're looking at 4 games of at least 86 yards, which is good. But granted, that's less than half of his game. So those touchdowns are definitely helping things. The Trevor Lawrence outlook seems more positive today than it did maybe 2 days ago. Sounds like he may return week 13 after their bye, which is better than, the talks of him possibly being shut down for the year, although we can't fully rule that out either. He's dealing with an AC joint sprain, which is notably very painful. But again, even if he does play, he may re-aggravate it. It may be too painful. They're optimistic right now because they've committed themselves to saying he's not coming back for at least 2 weeks. If we get 2 weeks from now and he's like, man, fuck, my shoulder still hurts, it's going to be a problem. So I think Brian Thomas Jr., I'm going to put him at like a 7 just because of the possibility, seemingly likely possibility that Trevor comes back, but factoring in that maybe he doesn't, and factoring in, some of these defenses they're about to face are not the worst. I mean, the Titans have a reasonably stout pass D. They still have to face them twice. They have to face the Jets week 15. And the fact that Thomas also hasn't had his bye yet is like, that's a detriment at this point if you're trying to win games. So yeah, I think I'll put Brian Thomas at a 7.
And, say Lawrence doesn't come back till week 13, it could be too little too late for some fantasy teams because, like, there's a bevy of guys that I'd rather have over Brian Thomas this week. Like, a lot of those, like, volume guys, like Cedric Tillman, like Jacoby Myers, like Ladd McConkey. I'd rather start all 3 of those guys this week than pray for a big Brian Thomas Jr. play with Mac Jones under center. It's just too scary of a play. Like, Evan Engram is going to eat in this Mac Jones offense. Like, if Thomas was one of these more possession receivers that's just going to gobble up targets, but he's not. That's what Evan Engram, and if Christian Kirk was playing, those are the kind of guys that are going to do that. It's just not the best combo right now.
Yep, I would agree. All right, back to my team. Tank Dell. So here's been the story of
the tank.
Here's been the story of Tank Dell this year. There's been different events for the Texans all throughout the year that have been reason for optimism for Tank Dell, and he has just not come through on them. It was – so, look, the issue with Tank Dell to start the year, right, was he was – unfortunately, which we didn't know was going to happen coming into the year, but he ended up being the 3rd clear target in the offense, buried in the depth chart a little bit.
I thought that's where you were going with that.
Well, shot, yes. But no, like, there was talk coming into the year. We didn't know exactly where the pecking order of targets was going to land with the Texans, with Diggs, Collins, and Tank Dell. You saw arguments for literally all 3 of those guys during the preseason. As the season started, it was clear that he was 3rd. Nico Collins ended up going on IR, the NFL's leading receiver at the time. So it was like, okay, Tank Dell is going to find himself with some more work here. Didn't really come through with that. He had one decent game. Not one decent game, but he had a game against the Patriots, 7 for 57 and a touchdown. Cool. That got you 15.2 points. Then he managed a touchdown against the Colts, 4 for 35 and a touchdown there. But that was the game that Stephon Diggs got hurt. So it's like, okay, Stephon Diggs got hurt. Obviously, we're not rooting for injury, but this seemingly vaults Tank even further up the depth chart. He gets to be the number 1 guy until Nico comes back. 15.6 against the Jets. That's pretty good. 6 for 126. And then this past week against a suspect secondary with still no Nico Collins and with Stephon Diggs done for the year, 5 catches for 39 yards on 9 targets. It just feels like even his big games, quote unquote big games, you're squeezing the juice out like really, really hard just to get 15 points. And it's like that's his absolute ceiling so far, with things seemingly consistently breaking as right as they could for him to get high value targets, high volume of targets. Now it's like, okay, this is the last gasp of copium and hopium, is that Nico Collins is going to come back. Maybe this is where, this is the situation where he thrived last year. No Diggs, but with Collins. Can this finally be the formula for him to succeed? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because I think their O-line sucking has been the bigger issue here.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about C.J. Stroud soon, but like it's affected him as well. But yeah, I saw a tweet, and I was just looking for it right now. I couldn't find it, where it was when Nico Collins and fucking Robert Woods, for some reason, were like on the field. Like, Tank Dell was averaging 15 full point PPR fantasy points last year. And I think that going into it, we thought Dell would be, limited in terms of snaps and in terms of targets because he was last year. But it worked. It worked. But I just think this has been a different Texans offense, and it just hasn't been as strong without Collins and Diggs. So, like, the odds of a big Tank Dell play to start happening. And, I mean, Stroud has also just, like, looked into the orb of confusion from SpongeBob when he tries to throw the ball to Tank Dell down the throw the ball down the field. Patrick, this isn't even on. But throw it down the field. And again, he's really only had one big game. Again, this is a guy that I would much rather be starting these higher floor volume-based guys than pray for a big Tank Dell play.
Yeah, I think, I've been so optimistic for him at different points this year, but like even with Nico Collins coming back, I'm at like an 8 for Tank Dell, just because I think it's finally time to accept
I'm in the same
that,
spot, yeah.
that regardless of like the situation with the receivers, this offense was just flowing passing wise so much better last year, and they've undergone changes to the O-line. You know, George Fant isn't here like he was last year. Juice Scruggs has had a different role this year. They've dealt with injuries, but more than anything, for whatever reason you want to point to, the Texans' pass blocking has been poor, and the run blocking has been really good. So not only does C.J. Stroud have no time, he has no incentive to do anything but hand the ball to Joe fucking Mixon.
Yeah.
So
that
it's
doesn't
just
help either.
It's not a good formula for the Texans' passing attack. And as much as I want to believe that getting back to the exact receiver personnel that existed while Tank broke out last year with him, you know, Nico, Robert Woods, or whoever the third guy is going to be, as much as I want to believe that's going to lead to like him getting back to form, I just think this passing offense isn't going to click at any point as well as it did last year. And Pat, we can go on to CJ Stroud just for the transition's sake, because I think we've seen that, right? Like, it's not just Tank Dell that's suffering. And this is the crux of why my fantasy team has just been mid as fuck this year, because I spent relatively high picks on both these guys. CJ Stroud has had one game this year of over 20 fantasy points. He's only been
Patrick
over
Mahomes
18. He's only been over 18 three times, including that 23 pointer. The passing offense is just not there. And I think, look, getting Nico back will put Stroud back on the starting mix at least. I don't know that I would plug him in right now unless you're really desperate for options.
They are playing the Cowboys, so actually this week might be a good time to plug him in.
Yeah.
But I think if anything, it's matchup based.
Yeah, I mean, you look at C.J. Stroud's games this year, like when he had a mostly full complement of receivers and was facing a bad offense, you're looking at bad defense. You're looking at week 1 against the Colts, where he put up 18.66. Then against the Jags, week 4, 23.5. After that was where Nico got hurt and or they were facing, better defenses. So this is now that formula of Nico's going to be back and it's a bad defense. I think you could start CJ Stroud this week if you don't have better options. I personally am starting Justin Herbert over him pretty confidently. But yeah, I think we could talk about it. But as far as the panic meter for CJ Stroud goes, I mean, he's been bad like all year. Like,
I was going to say, there's not a whole lot to panic about.
Yeah, I mean, the last 4 weeks, he hasn't gone over 13. Like he might be on your waiver wire at this point.
Yeah.
7 for CJ Stroud, only because the schedule opens up a little bit. 2 of the next 3 weeks are Cowboys and Jags, and it'll have Nico Collins back. But still, it's not one you're going to feel super confident, because Joe Mixon might just rush for 3 touchdowns in both those games, and it's fucked up.
Yeah, I'll go a little lower and say more so a 5, because I think the Collins thing will help. And again, it's just like you don't have super high expectations on him right now to begin with. So there's not as much to panic about as even a guy like Dell, who you've still been throwing in with a prayer every week pretty much.
I mean, brother, it's either Tank Dell or fucking Kayshawn Booty. I don't know. Okay, we'll move on to a guy I used to roster and then gave to you, DJ Moore. Pretty simple one here, Pat.
10. I've resigned myself to the fact that he's just not going to do anything.
I'll say 8. I'll go a little lower only because, as much as I don't think Thomas Brown is going to help anything, I'll go on the can't be worse side of things for right now, and maybe just getting a shitty vibes guy like Shane Waldron out of the building will open things up slightly, but not opening things up enough to where I'm going any lower than an 8, which is, pretty fucking high on the panic meter. You cannot start DJ Moore right now until you see something better from him.
What, the man hasn't had more than 40 yards in 4 games? Like that's
he's
just
barely
terrible.
had more than 40 yards all year. He's done it
obviously
twice.
he had a few of those big blow up games, but even at the start of the year, the first 3 weeks or so, he was catching 5 or 6 passes a game and had a pretty good floor. Like, he was giving you around 10 fantasy points. The floor is hell for DJ Moore, which is just crazy, especially the way we saw the Bears go off. What was that, against the Jags in London, when they absolutely just went nuclear.
And he had 4 catches for 20 yards.
In that game, that's hilarious. Yeah. But now, so even if he could do that then, and that the way this offense has looked, but it is a true point. Like, things hypothetically could get better for him right now. But like I said, I traded for him from you just because I might not have had a warm body to physically start, and of course, then I go and scooped up Ricky Pearsall, who is now clearly ahead of him on my depth chart. Like, I'm starting Ricky Pierce all over him and, over DJ Moore and any chance you could get right now. Yeah, it's high. It's like an 8 or a 9. But again, I feel like if you haven't given up on DJ Moore already, that might be more of a reflection on you than DJ Moore himself.
Yeah, regardless of how my season plays out in our league and regardless of how these next 2 weeks play out against you, thank you for taking DJ Moore away from me and allowing me to not have to deal with Dalton motherfucking Kincaid. I could start Hawkinson happily now and at least enjoy watching my fantasy team. Enjoy watching my fantasy team play on Sundays. Let's go back to my team, J.K. Dobbins. So Gus Edwards returned this past week, and although he didn't really do much to start the year, he was getting carries, and he got carries again, 10 carries for 55 yards against the Tennessee Titans. So as far as J.K. Dobbins is concerned, my panic meter, I'll say 4. I'm not panicking because I don't think Gus Edwards is going to take J.K. Dobbins' job. I think J.K. Dobbins still looks better, obviously, as a player overall than Gus Edwards does. This has killed Kamani Vidal, R.I.P. to our boy. That hype train. Yeah. That hype train is just not leaving the station this year. But to me, here's where I land with Dobbins. Like, he's got a bit of a tougher mini stretch here, schedule-wise. Once we get to the fantasy playoffs, the schedule opens up very nicely. But for right now, it's a tougher stretch, and Dobbins hasn't looked like awesome on the ground every week. So it's been the pure volume that has gotten him to be on that like RB1 or at least high-end RB2 borderline. Now, if he's not going to be getting that volume, it does worry me a little bit, and I think it certainly lowers his ceiling. The nice thing is that this is coinciding with the Chargers offense just getting better, so maybe the scoring opportunities will be there. J.K. Dobbins did have, opportunities from the goal line as well that he just wasn't able to convert. So as of right now, it doesn't seem like Gus Edwards is like guaranteed taking those short yardage situations. And one thing I did notice that is nice for PPR leagues is J.K. Dobbins, along with being like the main early down back, if there are drives where Gus Edwards is taking some of those early down snaps, J.K. Dobbins is now the guy playing on third downs, whereas before
he's the only guy playing on third downs.
Yeah, well, before it was like Dobbins was strictly taking early down work, and then Vidal was coming in for a lot of third downs. So in PPR leagues, like, Dobbins may actually be in line for a little bit more receiving work, which is nice, but I'm just worried that the overall touch total, I don't know, maybe it'll all end up breaking even, but I just don't like, as a Dobbins owner, seeing that monopoly on touches outside of like a couple of Vidal touches these last few weeks, go away. So it's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, I'm at like a 2 for J.K. Dobbins. Like, I'm not particularly concerned about him.
You're just trying to reverse jinx him because you're facing him this week.
And then the next day. And then, more so just the fact that he's still getting, he's still got 15 touches. He's had more than 14, not even just touches, carries. He's had 14 or more carries in every game since week 1. And obviously Gus Edwards was around for a lot of those games. And he's the only guy on that team that has more than 3 catches, running back, that has more than 3 catches this year. Gus Edwards, I think, is 1 target. And Kamani Vidal, I believe, has 3 catches. So he is still monopolizing all of the passing down work. He is still getting the opportunities at the goal line, even though that's kind of Gus Edwards' thing. And he's still going to probably have a floor of 14 to 15 carries a game, where you're probably looking at 18 to 20 a game. And in an offense that likes to run the ball and that looks better, I still think you're looking at a very solid high-end RB2 there going forward.
Man, I sure hope so. I like the way you look at it. All right, let's move on to our Mount Studmore
after this. So
let's move on to our Mount Studmore and Mount Bustmore segment before we get into.
Oh man, you cut out the best guy. I was gonna just laugh at how you have Javonte Williams on this list at all. My panic was gonna be 0 on Javonte Williams because he's had 1 fucking good game all season. Again, if you've been starting Javonte Williams,
R.I.P.
I dropped him like week 3 in a league.
Audric Estime, I'm the captain now. And then the last guy we had on here was also Sam Darnold, who just looked like ass, and I'm basically at a 10 for him because fuck that guy. Mount Studmore, Jamar Chase leads the way, obviously, 49.9 half PPR points, dropped a 50 burger if you play full PPR.
He does this every fucking year, it seems.
He does. I saw a stat, it was like, I don't remember over what stretch it was, but it was like there have been 8 50-point fantasy point performances over the last how many years, and Chase has 3 of them, and it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. All right. So yeah, he always tortures somebody. 49.9 out of Jamar Chase, first member of Mount Studmore.
It was so funny to see the discourse where it's like, wow, Burrow did all this and Chase did all this and they still lost. It's like, tell me you didn't watch Matt Ryan and Julio Jones without telling me you did. Those motherfuckers are putting up those numbers and losing on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Well, Julio Jones notoriously never found the actual end zone, although Jamar Chase is pretty good at that. But yeah, still, I definitely
Julio was just like 30 for 300 in a given game.
Julio literally almost had a 300-yard receiving game without a touchdown, which is fast. He actually might have hit 300. I don't remember. I know he was damn close.
Is he actually retired?
I think so. Kyler Murray, next up on Mount Studmore, he had 28.74 points, which was a nice bounce back for him after a pretty brutal week last week where I believe he had 4 points. Next up, Bijan Robinson, 27.9. He's starting to finally consistently put up those RB1 numbers that you drafted him for.
Nothing was more funny than watching Tyler Algier get stuffed at the goal line 3 times, and then they bring in Bijan on 4th and 1, and then he takes it in immediately. It's like,
on a play
that should be saying something.
On a type of run where you can tell he scored because of his play style. Like, it was like he had to be more nimble to like get into the space where he was going to be able to score there. He like kind of stretched over, and just that sort of flexibility hit the athleticism there. That was what was needed. It was exactly what was needed for that play. And yeah, it was just very funny. So Bijan's here on Mount Studmore. And then final member of Mount Studmore, I mean, God, nobody out there started this guy, but if you did, congrats. And I got to
seek help.
I seek help and go, I don't know, run our country or something, because you clearly know what to do. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 24.4 points. I started Taysom Hill this week on the premise that the Saints had no other weapons and that he was going to be, they had to throw to somebody. Yeah, they threw to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. What the fuck, man? I mean, he had 3 targets and 3 catches, and he turned them into like over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fucking psychopath. So
I will
good
say,
for him.
Don't start him. Like, I'm not starting that. Like, unless you're really desperate, I am not starting MVS. You're gonna start MVS.
Really desperate, Pat? It's either him or Taysom Hill.
I'd start Taysom Hill.
We'll see. Okay. Moving on to Mount Bustmore. Justin Jefferson had a brutal week on behalf of one of the panic meter fuckers, Sam Darnold. He was ass. He was so ass. He was hot ass. So he led Justin Jefferson to 7.3 half PPR points against the worst pass D in the NFL to this point, the Jacksonville Jaguars, so that was just painful. Jaden Daniels, 8.58 points. That was not fun either for a guy that you're pretty used to hitting, around the 20-point mark every week. Saquon Barkley, 8.3 points because Jalen Hurts' ass is just taking center stage every single week now. And then Kyren Williams, I think Kyren Williams might have more than this now. Let me double check because I think I wrote this down early. I don't want to get the point total wrong. Yeah, so Kyren Williams actually had 8.7 half PPR points. Kyren Williams just might not be that good anymore. His yards per carry have been really bad.
They looked really bad, the Rams. Yeah. They looked really bad, especially in the first half.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Kyren Williams has gotten clout, especially for fantasy, because he scored a touchdown in like every game other than up until these last 2. But now he's just
that he gets almost every fucking touch out of that backfield.
Yeah, now he's just inefficient. And like, I say this not just as a Blake Corum stasher, but like Blake Corum should be getting some more touches in this offense just because Kyren is not really doing anything with them. He is purely voluming his way to any decent fantasy performance that he has, but now he's not even having decent fantasy performances. 8.7 this week and 10 last week, so yikes. All right, let's move on to our ouchie outlook. All right, updating you guys on the latest injuries. So Dak Prescott, officially surgery on his torn hamstring. He is done for the year. Basically, I already talked about how this affects the Cowboys, but it affects them pretty badly. They are going to be brutal. If you have CeeDee Lamb, you're still starting him. If you have anybody else in this offense, I don't know. I don't feel great.
R.I.P. Pat's pal, Jake Ferguson.
I don't feel great about Jake Ferguson. I don't feel great about Rico Dowdle. I don't feel great about really anybody here anymore. So, yikes. Nico Collins, hamstring injury. He was activated this past week. Seemed like he was going to play. Hopefully people didn't bank on him too hard because it was the Sunday night game. He ended up being inactive, even though he was, activated. But it's looking like he is very, very likely to return this week against the Cowboys. Certainly get him in your lineups now that he is ready to go fully, and this will help Stroud a decent amount.
I think we're talking, at the very least, a top 10 wide receiver rest of season here with the
I'd
volume.
I'd rank him top 5 with what he did
the
first few
volume
weeks.
he was getting, and with the Texans just kind of needing that jolt and not having Stephon Diggs now. Yeah, I think the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I mean, he was top 5 before. I'm willing to put him right back in there. This is not an injury that I'm super worried about, like, coming back, considering the time that he's taken to get right. Isaiah Pacheco designated to return from IR this week, so he can start practicing. Unlikely to play this week. Probably not going to see the field, but he should return in the next 2 or 3. So, yeah, anybody holding a Kareem Hunt bag at Pat, I'm sorry. That is deteriorating.
Let's talk about
quickly.
Inefficient, man. That guy was, 14 for 35, but out of nowhere had 7 catches. The man who's hardly in the game on third down at all leads the team in receptions and yards. You're not going to get that from Kareem Hunt. So, even on a day where he didn't score and was inefficient as shit, the fact that you still got a good game about him, he's kept my team afloat the last few weeks. If you can, if you have another option, I guess I have, Najee Harris, which is kind of gross, but, if you have another option, you're going to be happy that Kareem Hunt kind of buoyed you for a while there.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And if you have Isaiah Pacheco, could be a nice little boost for you as you head
I will say,
playoffs.
I don't think Kareem Hunt necessarily goes away entirely.
I don't think he goes away for real life football. I think he goes away from fantasy football.
Oh, no, but I'm saying, more so to eat into Pacheco.
Yeah,
I think Pacheco's ceiling is a little bit tapered just based on the fact that they might ease him in from injury anyway, and the fact that you've had Kareem Hunt be as effective as he has been.
It'll be interesting what they do I don't know if they've made a corresponding move yet, but they're not going to carry 4 backs, so are they going to send Carson Steele to the practice squad? I think they're going
to send P. Ryan to the moon.
I guess
they wanted Pacheco to be the third down back anyway.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, Sam Laporta, AC sprain. He's day-to-day, but he could miss this week. Seems like Dan Campbell's not overly concerned. So if Sam Laporta misses time, it would be just this week.
We have the privy now of knowing if these guys practiced today, which is very nice. We normally do not. Sam Laporta, he did.
I'm assuming not. He didn't seem like he was very likely to.
I'm not seeing. Did not practice Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I actually might be playing Brock Wright this week instead of Will Dissly if fucking Kittle doesn't play.
Jesus. Yeah. Well, look, Sam Laporta actually heating up a little bit these last couple weeks. 2 of his last 3, I guess, 2 of his last 3 or 3 of his last 5, however you want to look at it, have been double-digit fantasy performances in half PPR. Granted, the one that is furthest back against the Cowboys was just off of 1 catch on a flea flicker. But 2 of the last 3 weeks, he's had 6 targets in those games and has put up 13.8 and 14.1. Things getting a little better for him, but looks like you're probably going to be without him for this week at the very least. Dalton Kincaid, knee injury. He returned to the game, but he is also considered day-to-day. Seems like you might be without him this week as well. Not that that's really that big of a deal. He did not participate in Wednesday's walkthrough practice. And look, if he's out, Dawson Knox is very startable. Yep. Very startable. With the Bills tight ends, it really just comes down to if one of them's out, the other one's good. I don't really think whoever their third string tight end is, although I think he did score a touchdown this past week, didn't he? Whoever their third string tight end is. I don't really think he's going to factor much into the actual game plan.
No.
So Dawson Knox becomes a legitimately startable player. Hold on, who the fuck is this guy? Because I know they had a third string guy score a touchdown. I could have swore they did. Man, maybe I'm tweaking because I guess they didn't even have a passing touchdown against the Colts. What happened?
Fuck.
What am I imagining? Why am I losing my mind? All right, we'll move on. Dalton Kincaid probably out this week. Aaron Jones, rib injury. Kevin O'Connell feels good about having him this week, so it seems like he should be fine, even though he was in a lot of pain last week.
Oh, dude, I was mad. I stashed Cam Akers and then dropped him 5 minutes before game time. And when he went down on a card, I'm just like, you got to be fucking kidding me. But
I've found myself in that position with a lot of handcuff running backs. I don't drop them because I'm like, as soon as I do, the starter's going to get hurt.
I'll be in the silly little goose that picks up my next week defense at like 12:58 p.m. on Sundays, and I dropped Cam Akers. And I'm like, I swear to fucking God,
I need this week's defense. Yeah, I got the Chiefs holding on to my roster spot right now with a fucking Bills matchup. Got to move on from that. All right,
start him, bro.
No,
I mean, if you could start the Texans against the fucking Lions and it works out, why not?
I guess that's true. DK Metcalf knee injury, expected to return to practice. So this is one we can check. Did he return to practice, or is it not
he return
enough?
to practice? He is back. They will have him back on the practice field, according to Corbin K. Smith.
Okay, well, so it seems like DK is actually trending toward returning this week. Yeah, limited participant in practice. So seems like DK's coming back. This makes me sad because I traded him away for DJ Moore, but that was a win now move, and it just didn't work, and I can't afford to hold all these injured idiots. So DK, though, when he's healthy, look, top 10 fantasy asset at wide receiver, I think, and probably about to continue that tear here for Seattle. So if you've got him, put him back in your lineup. Keon Coleman, wrist injury, already ruled out for the Chiefs game. He was ruled out on Monday, actually, so seems like Keon Coleman is nowhere close to playing. Amari Cooper, though, wrist injury is progressing and getting better.
Today.
Limited practice today, so seems like he's probably trending toward a return.
Especially with Kincaid out, too. I mean, you're looking at Cooper, you're looking at Khalil Shakir, Dawson Knox. Like, those are some decent, streaming options if you're desperate there. If Cooper's not going to be streamed, but
right. Well, if Cooper's healthy, I think you could put him in your lineup. Certainly not like a priority. Don't force him in there, but
no.
He is a reasonable start if he ends up playing this week with Keon Coleman out. Trevor Lawrence, we talked about him before. AC joint sprain. He missed the game while Mac Jones started. I believe he was ruled out. Now I originally said not ruled out, but ruled out for this week, and then they'll have their bye. This Jags offense with Mac Jones, just not great. Look, it's hard to evaluate considering they did play the Vikings defense, which has given some of the NFL's best quarterbacks absolute fits this year, let alone Mac fucking Jones. So I think, there might be a few more scoring opportunities for them than there were this week, but in general, like, you are not excited about starting any you really weren't anyway excited about starting any Jaguar other than Brian Thomas and Evan Engram. Now you have to just lower their ceilings greatly.
I'm starting Evan Engram, like I said, with that.
Yeah.
All he does is just siphon targets for whoever's quarterbacks, and especially that it's a bad one.
Yeah, so 6 catches for 40 yards on 8 targets. I think you could keep starting Evan Engram. Just understand that, there might not be as much opportunity. But again, things will probably look better than they did against the Jags at the very least. Najee Harris, ankle injury. He returned to the game as well. This is just one to monitor throughout the week. Let's see if he practiced today. Najee Harris didn't practice Wednesday, so
They've also, as an owner, I've there was one week where he didn't randomly practice on a Wednesday, and my panic meter was at a 10, and then he was just a full the next day. So they could be, but it could also be something.
Yep, got to monitor that one.
I'm not starting him either way.
Fair. If he were to be out, Jalen Warren certainly becomes a must.
Jalen Warren's a must start.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then Brian Robinson, hamstring injury, still day-to-day, but I believe he did practice today, so he is very much trending toward finally returning. This doesn't render him irrelevant or anything, but just shout out to Austin Eckler, man.
Our boy.
In Brian Robinson's stead, he's been really good, and even with Robinson around, he's been really good. Eckler's one guy that, I'm mad I didn't draft in at least some league because...
Yeah, me too.
I stood by this for so long that he wasn't washed and that people just decided to turn a season-long high ankle injury into him being washed. And I was like, man, fuck you guys. You're wrong. He's got it still. And he's looked very, very good with his opportunities. All right, moving on to our waiver targets. And look, granted, your waivers in most leagues have probably processed by now, but some of these guys may have slipped through and ended up on your free agent. So let's get into it.
Make it move, make it move, make it move, make it move.
Just here to help you guys make some $1 million moves. So look, bye week teams this week. We've got the Buccaneers, the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Panthers. So these are the players you could use to replace some of those guys if you need to. Really not a lot going on.
Many of these guys.
Yeah, really not a lot going on, as has been the theme as we've gotten later into the season for whatever reason. Running back, I would say there's one relatively exciting name here with Audric Estime. Anytime you get a running back that is taking over a backfield late in the year, that is something to take note of, especially on an offense that has shown itself to give their team, they've been in a lot of scoring opportunities. But Estime, let's see, what did he finish with?
12 for 46 or something? Yeah.
14 for 53 carry. And then Javonte Williams, I think, had 1 carry. So it seems like they're handing the backfield over to Audric Estime. And although the matchup this week against the Falcons isn't necessarily ideal, I'm interested to see what he does the rest of the way. And if he is for some reason available in your league, you got to add him to your roster.
Oh, he's a must-add. I wouldn't start him this week. It's just unfortunate because it's like, wow, and a starting running back. It's just been in one of the least productive running back rooms in fantasy-wise. Like we said, Williams has not been good at all outside of that one explosion against New Orleans on a Thursday night. But again,
I would argue there's a chance that the unproductive running back room was a result of the running backs too. Like the offense itself has been moving pretty well.
But again, only 14 of 53. It wasn't like he went and lit things up. But he's at least the ad of the week, I think.
Yeah, certainly the biggest name and highest upside ad, I would say, that's on most waivers. Cam Akers, speculative ad, should anything go wrong with Aaron Jones, should he not recover the way we expect? Cam Akers has looked good in his place, has clearly usurped Ty Chandler. So if you are a Jones owner or are just desperate for like a dart throw of a guy that, you never know which way the injury report can turn, go for Cam Akers if you want, but just not a super high priority ad.
Well, I'm just seeing this for the first time. Apparently Jones was carted off because the X-ray machine was on the far end of the field.
Yeah.
So it seems like he will be fine, but
yeah. I mean, he was in a lot of visible pain, but it's his ribs, so it's one of those things that's not.
But Akers has clearly jumped Ty Chandler, who was basically relegated to special teams until Jones got hurt, and then Chandler saw a little run.
Yep. And then lastly, for running backs, we've got Gus Edwards, who we mentioned before. Look, he's getting carries in a good offense. I don't really see a world where without a J.K. Dobbins injury, you're looking at a guy that you feel good about starting just because he's not going to be involved in the pass game and he's not going to get enough carries to rack up yards. So it's really going to be touchdown or bust. And not only is it going to be touchdown or bust, Jim Harbaugh likes to use Hassan Haskins in 1-yard situations. He did score. He likes to use Hassan Haskins in like 4th and 1 situations and now clearly, on the 1-yard line of scoring situations. So, like, the upside's limited, even though he's a running back on a good team that got 10 carries this past week.
And that's the thing, like, last year in Baltimore, that was enough. The touchdown dependency was enough because it was such a good offense. But obviously, if Dobbins goes down, he would be kind of on that must-start, quote-unquote, kind of line on a weekly basis.
Well, because then you're putting him back in a situation like the Ravens. Like, the difference between Ravens and now is he's just not the starter. Like, he was the 1A with Justice Hill last year in Baltimore. Now he's just behind J.K. Dobbins pretty clearly, even though he's still, again, getting a decent chunk of carries. Wide receivers, we've got the 49er boys, Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings. If either one is available in this offense, you got to own them. I mean, I really don't think how many leagues is Juwan Jennings available in? It can't be a lot. Like, he's still only rostered in 66% of ESPN guys.
What did he miss 2 or 3 weeks? And he came right back in and was the volume guy.
11 targets, 7
Pearsall
for 93.
Pearsall had the long touchdown. Kittle had a touchdown, but I think he did Jennings not lead the team in catches? Like, the fact
I gotta
that
assume 7 for 93 is close.
Even with Debo, the fact that he gets that involved that immediately goes to show that he is someone that they're clearly invested in.
Let me put it this way: would you leave a healthy Brandon Ayuk on your waiver wire? No. That's what Juwan Jennings is right now. That's the role he has in the Niners offense. He should be owned in every single league. And then Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
No.
Look. He is
Hear me out.
He is the opposite of what I typically want to go for in fantasy football. He is Alec Pierce. He's the same thing. We'll mention Alec Pierce in a second. But like when we were saying don't fall for the Alec Pierce because he's a deep bomb merchant and it's not reliable. It's not. But in the Saints offense, where Rashid Shaheed was routinely getting plays like this, understand that the floor is the absolute basement. It is. Marquez Valdez-Scantling could easily go 2 catches, 12 yards, 0 catches, 0 yards.
I think it's even lower than you.
That wouldn't surprise me. But especially for someone like me, Pat, who's in a situation where my roster's floundering a little bit, I kind of want the upside of one play can change things. And in an offense where they've shown the ability to convert these deep shots a little bit more than I think most teams have been able to, I don't think it's the worst. I'm not super thrilled about it if I have any level of wide receiver depth, but just know that if you guys out there are as down bad as me, who my wide receiver 1 and 2 this week with neighbors on bye is Tank Dell and Cedric Tillman, Like Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a pretty reasonable flex option. So I just think it's intriguing, especially from the perspective of like, they probably brought him in and weren't expecting much. Now that he just went out and did that, like maybe they do draw up a little bit more for him because he's shown, he's more apt to do something with it than Mason Tipton or Cedric Wilson if he plays, or God forbid,
Tipton or whatever the fuck you tried to call him.
Every once in a while, there's a player that pops up that I've never heard of, and I'm always fascinated by that fact because I'm so on top of things. But I think Kevin Austin Jr. was the Saints' third receiver this week. I don't know who the fuck
that's
that
just
is.
A randomly generated.
That's AI generated. So MVS, I think you could do worse. And then originally, again, our show's usually on Tuesdays. We had AD Mitchell and Alec Pierce on here. With Anthony Richardson at quarterback, I'm good. And Michael Pittman's also practicing. So, like, I'm good. I don't think you need to go after either of these guys. Yeah. Tight ends, Dawson Knox, we mentioned. If Dalton Kincaid is out, very startable tight end. And then quarterback-wise, we've got Russell Wilson, has a pretty good matchup coming up here. I'm actually starting him in a different league. But against Baltimore, look, they've been a pass funnel this year. And Russ, to his own credit, he's gone for 24, 13, and 18. Like, yeah, the bad game, you don't really want 13, but if you're down bad, like the upside of 18 and 24 isn't the worst, and they are clearly slinging the ball, and Russ feels comfortable. So I think you could do worse there. Jared Goff faces the Jaguars coming off of a 5-interception game. A lot of people might be gun-shy. All that man
had to do was throw 3, and I would have won.
Oh, true. Yeah. Goff, I think he's shown enough that, like, in a pinch, you could start him against a bad defense like the Jags, and I think other people, he'll probably be on your wire because of this 5-interception game, but I'm expecting a relatively quick bounce back from Jared Goff, personally.
I love the meme where it's like, it's Trump, like, looking at the camera, and he's like, when it's like Jared Goff, anytime he sees an open Texans defender. And it's
yeah. Yeah, so I think he's still startable despite that performance. And then Pat's got Trey Lance on here, and man, like, first of all, I'm pretty sure they committed to Cooper Rush already for this week at least. But Trey Lance going forward, like, maybe just because of the rushing upside, but again,
that's what I put him on here, was that, like, if he ends up playing, he has some upside.
McCarthy did confirm that Rush is going to start this week against the Texans. So this is TBD territory. I think Trey Lance might just be so ass that it'll be more like trying to start Tyler Huntley and, like, hoping that he could do literally anything with his legs, because the arm, it's just not going to be done. But all right, that'll round out our waiver segment and thus round out our show. Folks, thank you for tuning in to this differently timed and differently dayed edition of Brand Coverage. Thank you guys for bearing with us. We always appreciate you hanging out. So we will be back, next week. So, fun fact, next week I'll be in Maui for our show.
Nice flex. Yeah.
I'll be in Maui, but I think we can keep our normal time of 7:30 Eastern. It's just going to be 2:30 there, but that's totally fine.
AM?
No, PM.
Patrick.
Yeah, PM. So it'll be 2:30, but I think we can still keep it. But yeah, we'll call it, for now, consider us normal time again next week. So 7:30 Eastern time, Tuesday. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Brand Coverage. For Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you guys next time.
Brand said he was busting and cranking before the show. Bye-bye.
And for anybody still hanging out, we will answer some questions. First, get through our donations here. Zach with $4.99 said, flex spot needs a guy, half PPR, first down and catch premium for running backs. Interesting. Pickens, Dowdle, Algier, Jalen Warren, or Mooney. Flex spot needs a guy. Pickens.
Yeah.
Pickens. I would say, Pickens has been a monster.
I would say Warren caught my eye just if he's the starter, because he's been getting a bulk of the passing volume anyway.
Yeah, but Pickens has been very, very good. I don't think you could really bench him at this point. I mean, look, Mooney's a great option as well, but to me, Pickens is just peaking at the right time, and against this Ravens secondary, I would go with him. Zach with $1.99 said, start 2, London, Pickens, Mooney. London and Pickens. I mean, look, I love me some Darnell Mooney, but I don't know that you could justify... I don't know that you could justify not starting the 2, like, wide receiver ones on their own team. And with Pickens... Let's see, what did Pickens put up this past week? Yeah, 18 points. Like, he's on a bit of a heater here, just yardage wise. So I would definitely go with him. That Steelers offense looks much better these days. Kevin with $4.99 said, as a Vikings fan, I'm just glad that the Bears still suck. They sure do. They big suck. Cameron with 499 said Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, or Demario Douglas for the flex. Ooh, interesting. Bunch of. This is definitely a flex question. Bunch of mid boys.
That's generous. You see what Mike Tomlin said about Deontay Johnson? He's like, oh yeah, he's not really on their film, so I didn't even really think about the fact that we're facing him this week. It's like, Jesus Christ. So maybe revenge game is in store.
I do think there's going to be a bit of a revenge narrative just because I think the Ravens are going to want to get him involved against his former team. I genuinely do. I don't think you can go with Mike Williams, who had one catch on one target last week, even though it was for a touchdown. I don't think you can go with him. Douglas is a guy that always gets a nice little chunk of targets. I think he'd have a nice floor for you as long as you're okay with that floor being like he's had like 7.5 PPR.
50?
Yeah, like I think he's earmarked to get, a decent amount of targets against a pretty bad Rams secondary. I think it depends. I think if you're shooting for upside, go with Deontay Johnson and go with the revenge narrative. If you're shooting for just a chunk of points, go with Douglas. Douglas is going to get you, again, at least 7 half PPR points. Like he'll get you something there.
We still don't really know what Deontay's going to be in this offense, or if he is, how long it's going to take. So not inspiring options, but I think Pop is the way to go.
Yeah. Nadal with $1.99 said, I benched Kyler Murray. I hate everything. Bro, I did too in a different league for Sam Darnold. So,
oh dear. Oh boy. This Cardinal, we've said it. It's kind of been a theme throughout the year. This Cardinals offense has been like laughably inconsistent. Yeah. Where like they just look like a top 5 offense one week, and then they look like the Bears, like with Shane Waldron at the helm another week. So it's been Kyler was my pal at the beginning of the year, and it has been extremely frustrating. I actually don't own any of him, which has been kind of nice, but it's so hard to bench a guy like that. But
yeah, he put up 4 the week before that, and it was like I think 11 the week before that. So he hasn't really been doing much, but then he pulls this just out of nowhere, and it's just painful. Is Aaron Rodgers questionable with a Jets curse? Yeah, I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers. The Jets are toast.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, really hate it. Yeah, fuck the Jets. And then Burrow or Wilson this week from Cameron with $1.99. Burrow's been disgusting lately. I mean, the Chargers defense is good. I think you might be looking at more of a 20-pointer versus like the 30-pointers that he's been dropping these last 2 weeks. But I think you got to go with Joe Burrow, even with Russell Wilson being pretty decent.
And having a good matchup too, but yeah, I agree.
Sonny just dropped another $4.99. Said, as a fellow Patriots fan, do we want them to win more this season? I want May to win to establish dominance. Yeah. So here's the thing: like last year at the end of the year, I was rooting against my team a little bit because I needed the higher pick to get a franchise quarterback. To me, now that we have the franchise quarterback, I just want to win games because you're splitting hairs. Like the draft is such a crapshoot that as long as we have like a top 10 pick, I don't really care what pick it is. We need a lineman. There's no lineman that's going to go first overall in this draft. I think the draft hype is going to elevate like probably 2 or 3 quarterbacks to go super high. We don't need one, so I don't care. Sure. I just want to keep winning games and, look okay. Get this out of here. We'll do a couple of live questions. Thank you guys for all those donations. Burrow or Mahomes? Burrow, obviously. Burrow. I mean, if you're talking like real football long term, still Burrow. Mahomes is a bitch and washed. But yeah, if you guys have any questions,
I don't know if you saw Bran. He's in my lineup right now.
Mahomes?
Yeah.
Oh no.
It's either Mahomes or Tua. Like Tua's playing the Raiders.
Damn. Somehow I have the quarterback advantage, I think, in our matchup with Justin Herbert. Because he's actually looked quite good, and I'd rather have Herbert 9 carries. He had 9 carries last week.
I'd rather have Herbert than any of my 3 quarterbacks right now.
Dude got Greg Roman and a Harbaugh on his coaching staff, and now he's just Lamar. I floated that like remote possibility before the year. I was like, is he gonna run a little more than we think? And he was hurt, but now he's doing it. So I'm like, give me like 4 rushing touchdowns from Justin Herbert. That'd be lit. Let's see. Would you rather have Cedric Tillman or Jawan Jennings? That's a good question.
Ooh, like Tillman's volume has been crazy in these 3 games.
Yeah, so Tillman's last 3 games, 11 targets, 9 targets, 12 targets. Coming up, the defenses are pretty tough. After the Saints, we've got the Steelers, the Broncos, the Steelers, the Chiefs. So
yikes. Yeah,
not the easiest defenses. Let's see what Jennings gone for. I'm leaning Jennings right now.
I think Jennings is just going to be a little safer, better offense.
Seattle, Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago. So, like, decent defenses, but not quite as bad as Tillman's. Yeah, I'm going to go with Jennings just because of a more stable quarterback situation. And even though there's, like, a lot more competition on his team, he got the targets this week, and I think he's going to keep getting a decent chunk of them at kind of in that Brandon Ayuk role. He'll disappear certain weeks, but I think Cedric Tillman probably will as well. Like, it's been such a small sample size for him that, we haven't really seen it yet.
It's been crazy what he's done.
Let's see. Would it be possible to trade CD, or should I just keep him for the rest? Trade deadline is on 11/16. I mean,
I'd try Dak's out. I would try to trade him.
I'd try to trade him. Yeah, depending what somebody's going to offer you, I would.
That's the thing. If you could get someone who wants the name value, then I'd go for it. But I know last week we said the one small hesitation just might be like if Dak comes back for the playoffs, that could be a game changer. But that is not happening now.
Yeah. As a non-American fan, where do you see the international NFL games going? Everywhere
like
that's
actually
marketable.
Countries,
everywhere marketable. Like I think we'll get one in Australia soon. Probably.
That's just so far. Yeah.
It is very far, but I think we'll.
Or
get
do you
one.
think like Japan, South Korea,
Japan would be interesting.
North Korea?
Like, at a certain point, you get to countries where football, like, how big is it? Like, I know they're gonna, the whole
in
point
theory,
is to
why would it
expand
be
the
big
game.
in Europe?
Rugby exists, I guess.
I guess.
Like, I don't know if that really exists much in, like, some of the Asian countries, but maybe it does. I don't know. I'm sure they'll experiment as we go on with, like, basically every major country, major city. Because that
they
seems
will
to be
be, and I bet you they'll even play, like, a game in South Africa just to say they've gone to, like, all the inhabitable continents.
Yeah, because I think the NBA has done Africa games, so that wouldn't surprise
At least in
me.
the preseason, I know for a fact they have.
And didn't the MLB's gone to Australia, right? So I
Yes, they
couldn't
have.
see
Yep.
why I couldn't see why the NFL wouldn't do it at some point. Let's see, we'll do like 2 more questions here. Should I pick up Drake May, Herbert, or Rodgers? My quarterback is on bye, and don't be biased. Herbert. And guess what? I get to still be biased because I own Herbert, but no, it's Herbert. Drake May is a
I'd
fairly
rather have May than
startable-
Rodgers.
Yeah, me too. Drake May is not a bad start either, but I think Herbert, everything with that offense is clicking right now. Herbert's now had several straight, solid fantasy performances. Drake May, as much as he's mostly passing the eye test, like this past week against the Bears, 11 points, the
not putting
floor
up
is
the
a little
numbers.
bit low. The floor is a little bit low. One more question here. How about this? 2 more questions, because what is this? Is Drake May a bust or just unproven? Brother, what have you seen
Neither.
from Drake May that suggests he's a bust? He's progressed, and he hasn't been bad, so I don't know what bust would... I just didn't like that question, so I had to... It triggered me. Okay, one more
Biased.
question. Let's see. How about this? Trade question, I think. A.J. Brown, JSN, and Cole Kmet for Kupp, Monty, and Jameson Williams. Who wins?
I think I want the Cup and Monty side of it. I just think that like Cup's volume is so reliable, and Monty's volume, because I mean he's only had 1 week. Monty's only had 1 week with under 10 fantasy points. Obviously, like Jameson Williams is kind of a nothing, and Cole Kmet could very well potentially be a nothing in this deal. But I mean, I think you're getting a good volume running back with lots of goal line opportunities, and Cup and Brown are both great.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I definitely lead the Kupp Monty side. It depends. Like, if the person with A.J. Brown, the person with A.J. Brown is sending A.J. Brown away because they need a startable running back, yeah, definitely do it. Because you're not taking, like, a huge hit going from Brown to Kupp.
You're not taking a very big hit at all, potentially.
I mean, I think Brown's overall upside is a decent bit higher than
Yeah,
Cooper
but
Kupp's
Hurts is
week
just
to
going
week.
to run the ball at every opportunity.
That's true. I mean, Brown really hasn't had a spike week since...
I was thinking about how we
week
whiffed
7.
on neither of us taking Hurts in the rest of season draft.
I don't think we realized he was going to rush for this many touchdowns in the in the rest of the season, but he's just his ass is back and it is ready. But yeah, I think the Kupp and Monty side is a little better, especially if the side receiving them is doing so because they need it back. So good question there. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us once again for this episode. We will be back next week, 7:30 Eastern. Good luck in your leagues. And by the time you see us next, Pat and I's first matchup of the year will be in the books. So stay tuned for the result of that. But we'll catch you next week.
I'm going to fucking lose because I'm a choke artist.
I hope so.